Thanks, Doug. Thanks for everything.
Thank you. Let me see here. Turn that off. No, sit down. No, stop. Sit down. Sit down. Doc, sit down. You can't even get up. Sit your butt down. All right. Hey, I appreciate y'all waiting, and I assure you, everybody that has a book that I haven't signed, I'm going to stay and sign it, and I'm trying to keep the bar open, and I'll buy you all drinks so you all have a drink in the line while you're waiting. I promise. I swear. It's the least I could do. Well, hey, my name's Kris, Paronto again. Was a Ranger. Don't get out of Fort Hood much. Rangers don't, we don't like being in the dirt, a whole bunch of riding on tanks. So, but I've been out here a couple weeks earlier in Belton, and everybody, it was a great response. And so I really appreciate you all bringing me back. So thank you so much for that. Really. All the veterans, I know there's a lot of you in here, thanks for your service, especially you Vietnam veterans. I really, being left behind, and I'll get into that, and I did feel like we were left behind. I want to say I think I know what you felt like a little bit. So God bless you, glad you're home, and thank you for your services, all you veterans, especially Vietnam vets out there. Okay. Well, I'm just going to get started. It'll take about an hour. If you have to get up, go. If you have to use the restroom, it doesn't bother me. If you have a cooler full of Jack Daniels or whatever, you go get a drink. It doesn't bother me. Just bring me one back if you do. I'm not politically correct. I try not to be. Well, I try not to be. I'm not, period. If I say something that offends you or is not PC, get over it, because I'm not going to change it. Okay, that's the same. All right. And I move around a lot, so keep your eyes on me. I can't stand behind a podium. I'm not that kind of speaker. But again, we'll just get into that night. I'll take about an hour and 15 minutes. And what I want you folks to get out of this is not the politics of the story. The politicians have completely turned this thing into a complete farce. Benghazi is about heroism. It's about faith. It's about God. So when I say faith, not only faith in God, but faith in yourself and faith in your brothers. And it's about sacrifice and selfless service. Something that, and I get interviewed on the news quite a bit. I think all politicians should see 13 hours so they remember what sacrifice is and doing things for others instead of yourself. And that's what 13 hours is. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what we did the book for, and that's what we did the movie for. It wasn't to do a political venture or get anybody not elected from office, but sometimes the truth hurts, and the truth's the truth. So if it affects somebody's political aspirations, that's just how it goes. Well, 9/11/2012, myself and my teammates, which consisted of Ty Woods, who passed away that night, Mark Osgeist, John Tig Tigan, Boone, Jack Silva. Basically, we had 2 SEALs, 3 Marines, and 1 Ranger. The Lone Ranger I was, and I did hold that team together. I was the glue of the operation. Yeah, of course I was. I can say that in the Army community. When I say that in Bremerton or somewhere else where there's a Navy community, they all get fired up. I can't say that at Camp Pendleton. They all get upset. But we had a very good team, and all of us had been there for a few months prior to the attack. Tig had actually spent the most time in Libya. I had been in Libya for close to 5 months, but part of that time had been in Tripoli. But we had seen the country itself kind of continue to slide after the overthrow of Gaddafi. I mean, Tripoli was actually doing all right. Benghazi never really got itself in order. But that had a lot to do with us not really knowing what our mission was there. And that was due to us not really being on the same wavelength as far as contractors with the U.S. government. We didn't feel like the agency was telling us what exactly we were supposed to be doing there, and it made life difficult in Benghazi. But we, as a team, and because we're operators, because we're all of us were in our 40s, all of us had more than 10 years of contracting and military experience. All of us have been deploying for 10 years. We sucked it up. We dealt with it, as you should. But it just was hard because we just didn't have a good grip on who. Well, we knew who our enemies were, but we didn't know if our own agency was our enemy or a friend, and it made it difficult. Anyway, up to that point in Benghazi, We had been attacked as far as the consulate itself, not the annex. Now, let me make it clear. I worked for the CIA. I did not work for the State Department. The CIA and the State Department were two autonomous organizations. The only reason we helped the State Department guys is because well, first of all, they were Americans that needed our help. And second of all, is we swore to them that if they ever did need us, we'd come and help them. So when that was leading up to that attack, the consulate actually had been attacked twice before with two large IEDs on their outside wall. The British ambassador, who was living at the consulate at the time, had also been attacked. And you don't get that much in the media. You might, if you Google it, you can search Libya British ambassador attack and you can see it, but it didn't get much play here. And it was a pretty severe attack, and we responded to that as well. In fact, their security officer had got hit with an RPG through his armored vehicle, and we had responded to that attack and actually found a piece lodged in his arm. And luckily we had a physician's assistant there, and the physician's assistant actually saved that guy's arm. So Benghazi wasn't a safe place by any means. And it definitely needed more security there at the consulate itself. So when the ambassador was coming in, and the Ambassador Stevens, he was a high-level ambassador. Those of y'all that have worked for the State Department know that there's different levels of ambassadorship. There's the dilettantes that give money to politicians that say, here, you're the ambassador to Switzerland. Here you go, here's a gift for you. And then there's ambassadors like Ambassador Stevens that started at the Foreign Service level and worked his way up until he's a high-level ambassador of the country, which actually made him equivalent to a 3-star general. So you got a 3-star general out there with no protection. So when he came into Benghazi, and we heard that he was coming in with 2 security officers from Tripoli, even though they had a special forces team protecting him in Tripoli, they weren't going to be attending with him. It seemed kind of odd to us. Now, here's where God comes in to this little speech I do. Myself and Ty and Boone were all supposed to go home 10 days prior to the attack. We heard the ambassador was coming in. The team we had was outstanding. We could do things without even just look at each other, and we could handle the situation. Didn't need to talk much. It was beautiful. You guys have all, especially in the military, been on those teams where nothing needs to be said and everybody's going to go do the right thing and just move on. And it's very comforting to have a team like that, and that's how we were. So when we heard the ambassador was coming in, underprotected, and we were asked if we would stay longer, of course we said yes. Now, I do think that if we had any other team there at that time and that night, and I'm not tooting our own horns for our skill levels, everybody that's on GRS has a high skill level. I'm just saying the team itself was so good and so close to each other, and we could work together with limited, just basically with eye contact, that I do think there was a reason we stayed. I think God had us there for a reason. It was his decision, so you guys need to be there. So when we all said yes, that was it. So when the ambassador did come in on a couple days prior, we were doing what we were supposed to do as far as for State Department. We were doing reconnaissance of the area. We were making sure that the ambassador, if he needed a driver, we would drive him. And so when 9/11 came about, we were ready for his big meeting, which was supposed to be christening a English-speaking school in Benghazi, Libya. So during the day of 9/11, let's get in that day. 9/11, 2012. I was on QRF with Boone. Myself and Boone, basically what that means is we're on standby, just monitoring radio traffic, making sure that if any of our teams that are doing operations in town, because most of the time it's no more than 2 guys out in town doing an operation, if they needed us, we could come and assist. A lot of you guys know this that have been overseas as a contractor or in the Army or as a veteran, know that in some of these countries, especially where there's no infrastructure, that a flat tire can be detrimental to your health. Getting in a car wreck can be detrimental to your health. Getting caught in a little protest or a mass gathering can be detrimental to your arm sockets when they're ripping them out, ripping your arms out. So there's always a team on standby. Every day we had a different team on standby waiting to help out if any of our guys in town needed assistance. And I can tell you, as we're monitoring all the radio traffic, as we're watching Al Jazeera, I'll be honest, Al Jazeera sometimes gets information quicker than the CIA and NSA. We're seeing nothing that would indicate possibly there might be a protest in Libya or some mass gathering that might cause a riot or an attack on the consulate. It was very quiet. Also, while we're on standby, we're listening to the radio traffic from our guys out in town. and nobody out in town is indicating that there's a problem. It's been actually a very quiet day. Yes, there's people still shooting their AKs up in the air. All you guys that worked in the Middle East know that they love doing that. Whether it's a soccer goal, whether somebody gets married, whether they make a red light in town, if the red light's working, they're gonna shoot their guns up in the air. That's just how they are. You guys all know that. So that was happening, but nothing was happening to us. It was very quiet. And as the day wore on, it continued to just be a normal day. Myself and Boone are just monitoring radio traffic, watching Al Jazeera. We see something going on in Egypt, but it hasn't filtered down to us. So we're monitoring it a bit. We're watching it a bit close. We're also watching Battleship for the 18th time because that's the only movie that we had, and that's the greatest movie ever made. Should have won a ton of Oscars. I don't know why Battleship didn't win a lot of awards. It should have. So we're just hanging out. Now as 9 o'clock rolls around, it gets nighttime. We would periodically check on the State Department guys if we were out in town, because the State Department facility was 9 acres. That's a big facility. They had 6 guys on there with limited military experience, about 12 years combined between them. And they had an ambassador that was basically a 3-star general on this compound. So we made it a point that if they needed, let's just say we wanted to just make sure they were okay. So if we were out and doing ops, we would always make a point to come by near the consulate and call them and say, hey, do you guys need us for anything? We're here if you need us. And that night was no different. So at 9 p.m. that night, I hear Ty and Tig coming back from doing a reconnaissance in town. And I hear them on the radio, since I'm monitoring all the radio traffic. And I hear him say, Dave Ubin, State Department officer, say, Dave, hey, we're nearby, you want us to come check on you. And Dave Rogers up at 9 p.m., he says, guys, we're fine, go on home. So I heard Ty said, break, Tanto, we're coming on home. Roger, come on, bring it home, get home. So they basically had driven right in front of the consulate at 9 p.m. that night, and there's nothing going on, nothing. No protests, no gatherings, nothing. Well, they get back to our compound about 9:15, let him in the gate. Ty says everything's fine. Oz is going out on an operation with a case officer acting as her boyfriend. I mean, that's one of the perks of our job. If there's a female case officer, we get to act as we get to take him out on dates. It can be, well, in that case though in Benghazi, I wouldn't really call it a perk because the female case officer, she wasn't real nice, to be honest with you, let's put it simply. So it's like, dude, Oz, you're on it tonight. You got to take that heat round for everybody tonight. You're on it. But they head out. It gets about 9:32, and we get a call on the radio. And it says, we need all GRS, which is us, Global Response Staff, that's us. All Global Response Staff report to the team room. Now I know all the politicians, all the 8 million review boards that have never interviewed us said that the attack started at 9:42. Even Michael Bay in the movie has 9:42 on the TV because we didn't want to ruffle any feathers. But you'll read in the book that my watch, and I swore to it up and down, read 9:32. I'd been contracting at that point for 10 years. I had been in the military up to that point for 8 years. I did not want to be bothered at night. So when somebody calls me at night, I look at my watch going, what in the hell do they want us to do now? Also, and as some of you guys that have worked with me here, I got one up front here, knows that I'm a practical joker. I love messing with case officers, loved it. Because all the case officers would come in from, they go to a very well-respected school. Most of the time it's an Ivy League school, so they're all smart kids. They come in, and I'm not degrading you, Ivy League school. I mean, that's pretty hard. I'm not that smart. All right, I couldn't make it into an Ivy League school. I had to go to a state college. But they come in, they graduate, they go to the farm, and then once they got from the farm and they come over to one of our areas, whether it be Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq, all of them could bend bullets, do flips over cars. All of them were Jason Bourne, basically, is what I'm saying. Every one of them. So as a Ranger, I would treat them just like a private, as a Ranger team leader. So basically, if they left any gear around, I would usually hide it. If they left it out twice, I would put it in a jug of water and I'd put it in the freezer and I'd freeze it. If they left anything else for longer than that, I'd chub it. Now, all you have seen the movie know what chubbing is. If you don't, go watch the movie. Or ask another military guy what chubbing is. But I'm not gonna tell you up here because there's kids in the audience. But so Boone, who's worked with me for, basically he started with me when I first started contracting, and we've deployed for 10 years together off and on to different locations. He knows that if we're getting called at night, it's because Tanto did something to the case officer and hurt their feelings, and now we're gonna get dressed down for it. So he looks at me and goes, Tanto, what'd you do now? And I said, dude, I ain't done anything. I've been watching the greatest movie ever made, Battleship, for the 19th millionth time while we've been here. You know, I've been sitting here with you. And I remember 30 seconds later, we get a more urgent call. There's a sense of urgency in this voice, and it says, we need all jurors in the team room now. And Boone, being like me, well, he's the antithesis of me. He's very quiet. The movie depicted our relationship perfectly. He did hold my leash. He was the guy that would, Tanto, you need to back it down a little bit. But he was very quiet, very professional. He's very philosophical. While he's reading philosophy, I'm reading comic books. That's the difference, all right? But I remember he heard it, and I remember looking at him, and he smiles, because he knows something's happening. And I look at him, and I go, man, we could do something fun tonight. And we put our gear on, we run out the front door, and immediately I can see the firefight. And you guys, especially you guys have been in the Middle East or have watched firefights or been involved in when you see tracers, it's awesome. It's freaking awesome. You're watching the tracers go, and you're hearing the explosion from the RPGs. RPGs don't whoosh. A lot of you guys know this. There's an explosion when they go off from the propellant, and then there's an explosion when they hit. And you're just hearing the boom, boom, and you're hearing all that PKM fire. You know there's a heavy weapon. There's got to be a technical, because it sounds like there's a Dishka going off in the distance, which is basically a 50 caliber weapon. And then you're hearing all the AK fire, and you're seeing the tracers, and it's beautiful. That's where God comes in, and I think God, as long as you let him and you maintain your composure, you can find pretty much beauty in everything. It's pretty gorgeous. If you haven't seen a firefight from 3/4 of a mile away, I recommend y'all do it at least one time, just one time in your life. Yeah, seriously, it's pretty awesome. Well, this is how beautiful the team was. The team is awesome. It looks like an orchestra. The team is like a perfect symphony. Within 5 minutes, after watching everybody do their jobs, everybody has this particular job they need to do, 5 minutes, we're ready to go. Ty's got the vehicle. He's a sedan up front with Tig and Jack. I'm in the back vehicle driving an SUV with Boone. And I remember walking out. I have all my gear on. Yes, I was wearing shorts that night. All you commanders in the audience, you can fight in shorts effectively. Okay? I proved it that night. And also, there was no chance of me being a heat casualty, and y'all know that being a heat casualty is one of the biggest biggest injuries in the U.S. Army and the military. It's hot over there, guys. Wear shorts. So I walk out, I got my shorts on, I got all my gear, I got a machine gun and my rifle. I can't give you the nomenclatures because it's classified. If I probably would have put it on my server, you probably would know, but I didn't put it on my server, so I'm sorry, I'm not gonna get political here. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to say that. But anyway, I remember looking at Ty, and Ty gives me a little thumbs up saying his vehicle's up. I said, thumbs up back. I walk up, we have our chief of base, Bob, standing there. We have our team leader standing there. And I go up to him, I said, we're ready to go. And Bob looks at me, looks at my team leader, says, you tell these guys they need to wait. The team leader looks at me and says, you guys need, and I stop him, like, got it, dude, thanks. That's for the respect. I heard Bob, he's right here. I walk back to my car, and as I'm walking back to my car, Ty goes, what's up? I said, hey, Bob's telling us we gotta wait. Now, you know what, 5 minutes, I might have done the same thing. I lost my mind and left the non-commissioned officer ranks to become a commissioned officer. So I did, I'd say, you know what, I probably would have done the same thing. Maybe he knows something I don't. Maybe there's a military unit that I don't know about that's out there. Maybe there's a militia that's friendly to us that I didn't know about that he's coordinating with. So we don't really get too riled up on it. It's just after that 5 minutes, and the movie does an outstanding job showing or at least portraying Scott and Alec, them calling us on the radio. It actually is hard for me to watch though, because it's almost exact. When they start calling us after 5 minutes saying, hey, the consulate's been overrun, guys. Guys, where are you? We need your effing help. Guys, you need to get here right now. And you're just sitting there waiting another 5 minutes. Now it's 10 minutes. And you're listening to your buddies that you swore you were saved or you swore you'd help on the radio, and you're not able to go. And after 15 minutes since the initial call, we're getting calls again from Scott and Alec and Dave, and you can still see the firefight. You can still see their butts getting handed to them. And it's an obstacle that we got to get through. We also got to maintain our composure, keep your discipline. Inside, you're like a duck in water. Inside, you're going crazy. Outside, you got to maintain that composure because all the Jason Bournes are already panicking, and you don't want to make them panicking anymore. So, but I remember Tig getting out of the car 15 minutes, and he went up to Bob. Bob's at their front sedan, and he goes, "We need to go now. We're losing the initiative." This is Tig saying to Bob. Bob looks at him now and says, "You guys need to stand down." Now, I ain't going to argue with any more politicians about this. They believe us or they don't. I'm not going to argue with the Washington Post. I'm not going to argue with MSNBC. I'm not going to argue with any of them anymore. It was said, period. You believe me or you don't. That's about how it is. Well, when he said that, I remember I got on the radio. I said, "Hey, Tig, what's going on?" Tig says, "Hey, Bob's telling us to stand down." Boone looked at me and goes, "We're going to have to," he goes, "He's doing it to us again." Now, what he meant, and if y'all have seen the movie, you see there's a point where Ty and Jack get hemmed up at a checkpoint. That happened. And you see where the QRF element from us, Ty calls us on the radio and says, "Hey, Oz, I'm stuck at checkpoint, what yada yada." And we start moving and getting our gear and moving to get ready to get out. And that's where Bob says, "No, 17 Feb will hand her." That happened. The only difference was it was at night. It wasn't the daytime. We changed it to the daytime so people could see it better on a movie. It'd be more obvious. So when Boone said he's doing it again, what we were saying is he had already held us back, actually on 2 other occasions before that as well. And Ty did talk his way out of it. That's how he got home. It says a lot for Ty in overcoming obstacles and keeping your composure in that sort of situation. But when Boone said that, I remember looking at him going, we were already 15 minutes into a firefight. We've lost the initiative against at least 40 guys, maybe not even more. And I remember looking at Boone going, "Man, we're gonna have to buck orders." And I shouldn't say I don't have any regrets. It still bothers me when me thinking about it. I think if we would have bucked orders then, Sean and the ambassador would still be alive. Now, people say, "Oh, you can't armchair quarterback, you can't." Well, I'm not armchair quarterback. It's just what I feel inside, and you're never gonna get that out of me. That's just, and a lot of you veterans, that's how we have to deal with stuff. It's okay, I can deal with it. Well, after about 10 more minutes, now it's 25 minutes in, we get a call from from Alec Henderson, who's in the talk. Scott Wickland is with the ambassador, and basically watching himself get burned to death. And Alec goes, "Guys, if you don't get here, you're all gonna effing die. Or we're all gonna effing die," just like the movie. It says it exactly. "Guys, if you all don't get here, we're all gonna effing die." And I remember seeing Ty, and Ty cracks his door because we're in armored vehicles. You can't roll those windows down, at least not, I don't know, maybe you can now. When I was there, we couldn't. And he cracks his door and he goes like this to me with his thumb. And he's a big guy, he's a SEAL. All SEALs are big. They're all gonna go into Hollywood after. They all got the perfect push-up, perfect pull-up. They're all big dudes. And he was no exception. He was a big dude. His forearms about as big as my leg, which isn't saying much because I'm not a big guy myself. But it was awesome. It was like, look at that dude, look at that arm. I was like, man, that's so cool. Now I remember giving him a thumbs up through my vehicle like this. Now, we're gonna roll out the gate, but throughout this process, and a lot of you guys that have been in or been trained well, you know you're continually wargaming in your head, especially during a crisis situation. When a minute passes, you're thinking, okay, the situation's changed. What do I need to do now? Now another minute's passed. The situation's changed. What do I need to do now? That's what we're doing that whole 25 minutes. So before we roll out the gate, it just hits me because I'm wargaming in my head because we're gonna be running into a different situation every time that minute passes. I go, we need an interpreter. I've been through this in Kandahar and Coast before. I need an interpreter. Now, like I said, God's looking out for us. I know God's with us that night because I remember I cracked the door. I got out to go find the interpreter and he's walking right in front of me. Out of nowhere. We have one interpreter on that whole base. And he's actually a linguist. He's not a combat terp. I had combat terps in Iraq. I had one that had a cattle prod. They would help move people out of the way because it's an escalation of force. You don't want to shoot everybody. And I've seen what happens when sometimes you hit Iraqis. It's just when the water bottles that are frozen, that's awful. So I had an Egyptian interpreter that he'd move people by sticking with the cattle prod. Now that was my combat terp, and he did an effective job. I just had to kind of slow his roll when he started to enjoy it. I just like, dude, you can't do that anymore. It's like we're driving down the road 100 miles an hour, and he's like, hey, I got to shock that guy. I'm like, no, why do you need to shock him? We're fine. Well, the linguist in Libya, he wasn't like that. He was not weapons qualified. He's about 5'7", he balding, frumpy. He looked like Bob Newhart if Bob Newhart was from Egypt. He looked exactly like him. He was the cutest little thing. He had like a little button. He was the cutest guy. Well, I remember seeing him walk by me, and this was incredible. This was one of the most incredible, courageous things I've ever seen from a man, because he's not supposed to be doing this. He's not trained to do this. His mindset is not to go and get into combat. He's not even supposed to go out the gate. He's supposed to sit there and translate materials at a desk inside the base. And I remember going up to him, and it was, the movie's exactly right, exact. I said, dude, we need you. He goes, Tanto, I'm not weapons qualified. I grabbed my pistol, I handed it to him. I said, you are now, go get your stuff. And I remember he turned around. Now, I didn't think it was courageous at first, I'll be honest. He turned around and went inside the building as fast as he could. And in my head, I'm going, man, there goes my gun. I'm never gonna see that again. But you know what, 30 seconds, he's back out. And his helmet's on backwards and his armor's too, I mean, the movie was exactly right. He doesn't wear, and it's, again, I'm just like, wow. That's just awesome. Look at this guy. This guy has no business going with us, and he's coming out 30 seconds, he's ready to go. Granted, we got to fix all his gear because he's all chewed up, but he looks incredible. It was really motivating, and it just shows what courage is. Courage, even for people that aren't trained or don't go through all the military training or all the crisis situations, you don't go through SEER school or you don't go through Ranger school selection and all that, you don't get scuffed up, which I still think privates need to be scuffed up a lot. That really saved me, I'll be honest with you. I was scuffed up continually. A lot of it was on my own, it was my fault. I caused the scuffing, but it really made me tough and able to get through situations like that. So this guy had none of that, and he's just coming out, and he's going with us. And I put him in the back of our vehicle. I said, tie her up, and we head out the gate. And it was awesome. Screw this, screw orders. Screw man's law, now it's God's law time. No greater love is no more than this, that a man laid down his life for his friend. I don't care if I get fired. I don't care if I get thrown in jail. And all of us were like that, you know? And that was the beauty of that team, is everybody on the team thought like that. Even the SEALs. No, I'm kidding. I love my SEALs, they're awesome. Well, we get there, and just like the movie, I'm gonna skip a bit, but just like the movie, we weren't able to drive all the way there. We had to stop about 400 meters from the compound because we did lose the initiative. And as we get there, there's these guys, militia. I don't know which militia group it is. I'm thinking maybe it's 17 Feb. I don't have any idea because nobody wears uniforms over there. And there's a bunch of guys running around right where we were supposed to make our turn towards the consulate. There's one guy with a PKM, and he's shooting towards the consulate entry, about 400 meters down. Everybody else is just cats, like cats with their heads cut off. And I remember Boone looking at me going, man, and it was more of a statement, it wasn't a question. It was like, we waited 25 minutes for this? And I just shook my, I'm like, yeah, I guess so, dude. Well, as we get out of the car, because we're trying to assess the situation, and we get Henry out, I'm like, Henry, find these guys and see what the heck's going on, find their leader. I remember you start hearing the snaps, and you hear another snap, and then like a water faucet turning on, you just hear snaps going everywhere. Now what a snap is, and a lot of you guys that have been overseas or been shot at before know that snap is when a high velocity rounds goes by your head. It breaks a sound barrier. And it's freaking awesome. It really is awesome. Because you know what, when you hear that snap, first of all, it gets that adrenaline really going, and it does sound cool. Second of all, and this is what we tried to show as contractors. Contractors have got a bad rap for being bloodthirsty, bloodlust killers. We want to shoot everybody. I've never shot at anybody overseas that didn't shoot at me first as a contractor, ever. So when those snaps are going by my head, I'm like, okay, they're shooting at me now. Now I can turn my select letter from safe to semi, and it's on. And I remember the whole team was saying the same thing. I see Tig, he's got our one 40 millimeter grenade launcher. Yeah, we're the agency, and we have one 40 millimeter grenade launcher. That's money for you. Well, he gets out with the 40 millimeter, he comes around the corner, and I hear him just going, foomp. Count to two, ba-boom. And you hear foomp, and if that doesn't get your jib going, I don't know what will, because you're like, yes. I mean, I'm glad when it goes out and not in, so that's much better. So, and as he's doing that, me and DB, me and Boone's our one sniper. He's our really good, he's our recon sniper. And he's from First Recon, good guy. He goes, Tanto, let's get high, which he meant, let's go. There's some buildings and backyards that are abandoned that he wants to get up on the top when you start putting sniper fire in. And I got a machine gun, so I can start laying machine gun fire in. So we start jumping walls. And just like the movie, I did grab two locals I thought I could trust. I don't know why I thought I could trust them. Again, I think God's just kind of having me a little bit of faith there. Two young guys, we start jumping walls, and I mean, it takes us forever, and I'm smoked. I'm climbing walls. I'm trying to get on the top of buildings. We get on the top. Actually, the movie shows us climbing on the top of one building. We actually climbed up on the top of two, and while Tig and Ty and Jack are fighting along the straight line distance. And I remember me and Ty just talk on the radio. He's like, Tanto, do you see anything? I'm like, no, but I think you're doing a good job suppressing that machine gun because I can't hear any more fire. I said, just shoot, move, and communicate. We'll meet you in the middle. And the media didn't tell you this, but it took us almost 35 minutes to go that 400 meters and fight our way onto the objective. Then we got on the objective together and linked up. And this is, again, you can find beauty in everything as long as you let go. Don't try to control everything. We get in there, and I love when politicians say fog of war. If you're a politician, don't say fog of war anymore. There's no such thing. It isn't. Man, when I got on that consulate ground, everything was so vivid, man. That was the most orange I've ever seen. Anytime I've been in combat, that's the brightest colors you'll ever see. That's the greenest grass. And I told Michael, I said, during Michael Bay, when he did the movie, like, dude, you got to make that grass really green because that's what it looked like. You got to make those colors pop because it was bright, bright orange. And your senses it's like a sixth sense. So we get in the middle of the consulate and we start doing our thing. And Ty and Jack are already running inside the burning villa trying to find survivors. The rest of us are breaking off and going. There's 4 different buildings on this 9-acre compound. We're trying to find survivors and clear the buildings that aren't on fire. And we end up finding all the State Department guys. The movie and the book do a better job and give you more of a detail of what we actually did there. I just don't have the time. The bottom line is we got all the survivors that we could find. We linked them up at the villa that was on fire. We got a vehicle for the State Department guys to get out of there. And as I'm coming back from clearing the Tactical Operations Center, I remember I ran into Boone, and Boone says, we lost one. Now that's always hard. And that's an obstacle that you got to deal with. And it's an obstacle that we dealt with. It still bothers me because you don't want to lose anybody. You know it's war, you're going to lose guys. It's going to happen. You don't ever want to hear it, but you know it's going to happen. And I remember going, who was it? And he goes, the IT guy. I'm like, gosh, who's the IT guy? I'm like, damn, that's Sean Smith. He'd been there for 2 days. And that's what really sucks is you're like, man, he's just got here. Well, I go run in the front of the building, and I see Jack and Dave Ubben put him out of a window. Sean had died of smoke inhalation. I see Scott Wickland, who's a State Department officer supposed to be with the ambassador, and Sean Smith protecting them. I see him kind of going into shock because he looks like a chimney sweep too. And Jack, being a good guy and being an angel and keeping his senses and seeing that Scott's going to go into shock, even though Sean's dead, he tries to resuscitate Sean. And I know why he's doing it. He's doing it to get Scott back in the fight. It's like, hey, dude, we're fine. Get your head back in it. I'm going to try to save him. We're still in this fight. And it worked. And that, again, something that has a lot to say for special operations, to be honest with you, and putting you and scuffing up privates because you get that never quit attitude. It's not easy. And it worked. So now Scott's not going to be a casualty for us. Well, Sean's dead. We put Sean's body in the back of an SUV. I remember saying a prayer over him. And I remember Jack coming up to me and saying, hey, we forgot all the stuff in the talk. We got to get all the classified. Now, it wasn't our job, but the State Department guys had forgot the classified equipment. So me and Jack run back to the talk, and we have knives. We're just cutting wires, grabbing all the media that we can, all the electronic media, computers, laptops, hard drives. And again, there's comedy in combat. All those one-liners in the movies, those are verbatim. All those things, funny things, I didn't make any of that up. That's what I said. And as we're running back, now this is one thing though that I wish Michael would have put in the movie, and I'll tell you why after I say it. Well, we're running back, and Jack looks at me, and I'm a Mexican. I got my hands full of computers and electronic media. You know where I'm going with this. And I'm running back, and Jack looks at me and goes, dude, doesn't it look like we just robbed the Best Buy? And again, I'm pissed at Michael Bay because I'd be a gazillionaire right now as a spokesman for Best Buy if we would have put that in the movie. And I'm thinking in my head, dude, I thought, man, he's only saying this because I'm Mexican. I know that's why he's saying it. And then I say, and he's Portuguese, so I'm like, you're only Mexican light. What are you talking about? But that's what's fun, is that we had fun. I love the movies Lone Survivor, and I love the movie, American Sniper, but it's not bravado in combat all the time. There's fun stuff where because you're dealing with stress. So you're making jokes. You're making inappropriate jokes because this is how you deal with stress. And that was going on that night. And we wanted to make sure it was in the movie. I love when the Washington Post or New York Times or Rolling Stone says, oh, this isn't a realistic movie. It's too video game-like. I didn't know who the bad guy was. I don't know who the good guy was. Tanto wasn't wearing shorts. Well, guess what? Welcome to our world. We didn't know who the bad guys were either, you know, and we were having fun. We throw all the equipment in the back of the SUV. The State Department guys are going to drive out. And I remember Jack and Ty going up to Scott, who was driving. He still wanted to drive the car, even though it was in no shape to drive. And he goes up and he goes, guys, when you leave this compound, make sure you go left and not right. He goes, because there's an Ansar Sharia safe house, a terrorist safe house 200 meters from the consulate. The consulate was actually built next to a terrorist safe house. And as soon as he says that, there's a huge explosion on the backside of the villa. It knocks me down. And now, about this time, we had pushed off all the bad guys. It had been almost an hour after that. You know the Middle East, guys. Everybody likes to come see what the commotion is. So the 9-acre compound is like a freaking block party now. There's just people everywhere. And you don't know who's good or bad. And when that explosion hits, I look and I see a guy running by me, a Libyan. He's not in a uniform. I don't know who he is. He's missing his hand. He's running by me missing a hand. And just out of instinct, I look at another Libyan. I don't know if he speaks English. I said, hey, what happened? He goes, grenade. So I'm thinking this guy threw a grenade at us. And he tried to cook it off. And he held it for 3 seconds instead of 2. So he just blew his hand off. And I'm thinking of my old football playing days. In my head, I'm going, hearing my old football coach going, dude, rub some dirt on it. Get back in there. You'll be all right. Suck it up. But when I say that, we hit again, another explosion hits the backside of the villa, and this one, you know, sprays chunks of brick and stuff places and knocks me down. And I was like, that's an RPG. Well, for those of y'all who have seen the movie, I did have a fight with a local commander that I said, hey, go get guys and help us. And he said, I got the phone number for the bad guys. That happened. I remember arguing with him and going, how do you know the bad guy's phone number? But I also remember telling him, okay, when you come back through this back gate with your guys, close it. Well, he had left it open. So we got counterattacked at that back gate. And as soon as that second RPG hit, water faucet, snaps going everywhere. And I remember taking a little bit of a knee, and there was a vehicle to my left, and I remember just starting to shoot. And as I'm shooting, and I'm basically using the block of this SUV as a cover for me, I hear a honk on the horn. Well, I'm using the SUV that the State Department guys are trying to get out of that compound with as my cover, and they want to get out of there. So I'm shooting, and I hear a beep, and I look, and it's Scott. He's like, you know, get out of the way so I can leave. I'm like, fine. He leaves. As he goes out the gate, and I turn around to start firing, I see out the corner of my eye, he goes right. I'm like, oh, you idiot. Now, watch the movie, read the book, see what happened to him. They got hammered. The movie's pretty dang close to being accurate. I remember seeing that dang SUV when I got back to the annex later that night, and it was almost probably 45 minutes after they had got home, and those run flats were still burning. We couldn't do anything for them because we're getting attacked. And I remember now that I'm wide out in the open. There's nothing, no cover for me, and I'm thinking in my head, fire, just shoot, just keep shooting. Also, I can feel, well, there's people have asked me, do I believe in God? And I said, man, no, I know there's God. Because I remember just feeling like I wasn't gonna get hit. And I've been through those situations before where you just feel protected. You feel like there's a warm bubble around you, like there's a force field around you, it really is. And I just take a knee and I just start shooting. And I'm out in the open and there's snaps going over and it's awesome. If you guys are hungover, tomorrow morning get somebody to shoot at your head. You'll sober right up. And you're shooting. Just make sure they can shoot. So don't get a SEAL. I'm kidding. I love you, SEALs. I know this is Kris Kyle country, Marcus Luttrell country, I know. They're both good dudes. I like Marcus. I do, and I love Taya. She's a sweetheart. She is. I'm serious. I mean, serious. This isn't a Ranger joke. They're great people, and they're heroes in their own right. Well, we're shooting, and I feel fine. Nothing's gonna hit me. Maybe that's arrogance. I don't know, but I think it's God. And my right eardrum blows out, though, and it hurts. And I glance over to the right, and there's this Libyan, and he looked like he just got off work from Mutual of Omaha, and he took his jacket off. Because he's in a button-down shirt, slacks, and he's got loafers on, and his AK-47. A lot of you guys have been overseas, see some of those nickel-plated AKs that these guys have. It's like, pimp my AK. And that's what it saw. It was like beautiful AK. I'm like, and he just kind of smiles at me. So I'm shooting, and he's right next to me helping me. This guy comes out of nowhere, and I kind of think, man, God just sent me a little Libyan angel, put him right next to me. And as I'm shooting, I remember I'm running out of ammo out of my magazine. Now I got ammo in my pockets of my shorts, but Boone, like I said, Boone's my best friends. And Boone knows what's going on. This is the beauty of that team. Nobody needs to say a word. Boone comes screaming around the villa. He's got a magazine in his right hand already because he knows I'm running out. He slides it across the road so I don't have to skip a beat, drop my magazine, I put it in, he starts shooting. So now we're starting to take that fire, that initiative back. So now we're all fighting. Libyan Angel, Boone, myself. Now, I love you Marines, and all you Marines, after I say this, are probably gonna wanna fight me after. Y'all get all upset. You don't have senses of humor like the SEALs and Rangers do. I love my Marines. You guys are hard. You guys are tough. Smart? I don't know. Y'all are like, I hate that guy. Let's go, just kick his ass. Well, I remember, and this is brave, and I'm saying this is awesome. We're shooting, and I see a muzzle flash on top of the villa that's on fire. And I look up, and it's Tig. Tig had climbed up onto the villa that was on fire and is putting fire down because he's got a better line of sight off the roof, off the building that, let me say again, was on fire. That is, hey, brothers, hoorah all you want. That's fucking hoorah. Excuse my language, sorry. I get a little ahead of myself. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I see the dang Christian school over here. Holy crap. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, that just shows, can you tell I go back to that night? I mean, I was like, man, that's awesome. That's the Marine up there. Again, not smart, but man, it's hard. And we took the initiative back. And I remember the RPG gunner, the one, I don't know if he's the one that started it all, but you know how these guys fight. They jump around the corner, they shoot, then they jump back. Well, this one jumped on the corner, and you can see all the IR lasers just go, shoop, all the infrared lasers, and there's and I'm not saying it's a simultaneous shot, but you can just see all the lasers come in, boom, and he goes down. And it's weird, because sometimes in combat, you'll shoot a guy and it'll intensify the fighting, and sometimes you shoot the right guy and it'll stop, and that's what happened. We hit the right guy, the tube fell back, he fell on the ground, you can see the tube fall back in the street and bounce, and it's like a water faucet that just turned off. Now, we all argue who hit him. DB says I hit him. I think I hit him. Libyan Angel, if he was standing next to me, probably would have thought he hit him. But since Tig was up on the burning building, I'll give Tig credit all day long, because that is pretty bad stuff. Well, we knock him down. State Department guys are gone. It's getting close to midnight. The ISR, we finally get a Predator up in the air, and the Predator's telling us there's people massing and we need to get back to the annex. The only problem was we hadn't found the ambassador. Now, I'm not gonna go into it too much because it really hurts and it bothers me to talk about it, but Ranger Creed and the 5th stanza, part of it is you never leave a fallen comrade to fall in the hands of the enemy. Everybody in the military service has that sort of mantra. And we left. Now, we didn't know the ambassador was there. We tried to find him. The movie does a great job showing how hard it was getting in there, and then we almost lost Ty in there because the smoke was so thick. And if they would have actually if they would have represented the black smoke in there that we saw that night, you would have saw a black screen. You couldn't see in it. You put those white lights on it, and it just is like putting your brights on in fog. It made it worse. And so basically, we were just going and taking turns running in, ran as far as we could, feel around, then run back out, and then go pull security. Then the next guy would come around. We had to do that. Well, we left. We went the right way. We went left when we left, not right. And we get back to our annex and we start getting ready to get attacked. And now, we didn't find out till later, but the ambassador was there. We left him. He wasn't alive, but we left his body. He was found about an hour after when the fire died down in the villa and the fighting moved to our compound. So we left a fallen comrade, and that's our fault. But again, it's an obstacle. And it's something I'll deal with for the rest of my life, but that's okay. I have to. I signed up for this. Well, we get back to the annex, and immediately we start getting attacked. We get ready, and they start moving on us. The movie does a great job showing what it looked like through night vision and showing what our night optical devices look like when our LiDAR lasers were picking out targets. Remember, the first attack was very small, probably about 15 guys, maybe 20 guys. And they were utilizing the tactics they use, which to us is, which is us is horrendous. They're utilizing a house to stage from so they can get closer to us, but the house has the kids in it and the family members in it. And we couldn't shoot. I'm not gonna shoot that house. I remember toying with it in my head going, God, I wanna take that house out, because I had a pretty good machine gun. And I remember Boone going, no, you don't do it. So there's kids in there. And I'm like, I know, I can't shoot a kid. I'm not shooting a kid. And so they move on us, and as they're moving on us through that house and they start to leave, the problem was for us not being able to shoot. People ask me, why didn't you start shooting them immediately? Well, when they started to come out in their little pairs from that house, we didn't see any weapons. Also, the kids in the house were around high school age. And that's why I continually kept saying, Chief, are we expecting any friendlies? Are we expecting any friendlies? And we kept getting reports that were wrong, that 17 February, the militia that was supposed to be helping us, which is basically, which is now an offshoot of Ansar al-Sharia, which is the precursor to ISIS, you can follow the chain down. We kept getting word that they were gonna help us and they were coming to our positions. So that's why I kept saying, hey, are there any friendlies? Are there any friendlies? Are there any friendlies? And we kept getting, no, we don't know. No, we don't know. No, there isn't. No, we don't know. There might be. Well, as they're moving, I remember looking at Boone going, Boone, do you see a weapon? I gotta have a weapon. Ty's saying the same thing. Guys, don't shoot unless you see a weapon. We're not shooting kids. And by the time they get 30 meters from Oz's position, that's when Boone says, I got an AK. And that's when we see a fizz come across the fence. And that fizz lands, it explodes. Tig is actually running back to his position with a bottle of water because he went to get some water, and the fizz lands right next to him, and when it blows up, he kind of disappears. But I don't have time to worry about Tig. We're getting hit and we light him up. Again, the movie's pretty good at showing how we light him up. Tig actually, very lucky for Tig, and we're blessed, again, very blessed that night. Tig had actually got hit with a gelatina bomb. Now what a gelatina bomb is, it's a bomb they use for fishing. So it doesn't have any shrapnel in it. It's basically like a flashbang 10 times the size of the stuff we throw in the rooms. So when it blows up, it does shake a room, and it can shake concrete, but it's not gonna put shrapnel in you. So when he gets hit and knocked off his feet, he's able to jump back up and get in the get back in the fight. And that gelatina bomb, what they use them for, and they continually threw them at us that night, that's utilized for fishing is what they're usually used for. They throw them in the ocean, it blows up, fish come up. That's what they're used for. It's redneck fishing, Mediterranean style. But they can use them as weapons too. But that first attack, we knocked them out. We took them out, good. It's a beautiful thing seeing enemy go down or seeing them run away. I'll be honest, it's a better feeling watching them run away than it is watching them go down. To me it is. Some guys might agree with me, might disagree with me. Well, we fought them off. 2 hours in between, Glenn Doherty and his team are coming from Tripoli. They'd rented an oil executive's jet, $20,000 approximately, and they were flying back from Tripoli to Benghazi to help us. So basically they had to charter a plane to get our GRS guys and 2 Delta Force guys to us. Well, between that time frame, between 1 and 3, before we got attacked again, about 4 in the morning, we had all moments of reflection. You can see their moments of reflection for Jack and Ty. You got to put the seals on Hollywood. You know, they got to put them up and show their moments of reflection in the movie. The rest of us, you can read about it in the book. Now, my moment of reflection, and the reason you don't put the Rangers' moment of reflection in there, because it's like 15 seconds. It's like, and I was married at the time. My moment of reflection was, okay, did I tell my wife I loved her? Yes. Did I tell my kids I loved them? Yes. Did we leave on a good note? Yes. Okay, out of my head. I'm not thinking about them anymore. And that was my moments of reflection. I used to train guys that used to come over for GRS missions, but when I go back home, I wouldn't go home, I'd actually go vet the guys that are gonna do my job, go put them through INDOC courses. And I remember I would tell them, I said, if you're going overseas and you think you're not coming home, you think that you're never gonna see your kids again, you think that you're gonna die, don't go. I don't want you there, because you're gonna be a liability to me. I also used to tell them, this is why I think of this. This is why I think this way. There's a wartime Bible I had that a Ranger buddy of mine that died of cancer about 8 years ago gave to me. And there's a prayer, and there's this prayer before battle. And at the end of the prayer, it says, if I die on this battlefield today, may I die at peace with you. Now, I'll be honest, I got kind of scared a bit when I first read that. I was like, holy crap, did I just tell God he could kill me on this battlefield? What am I doing? I went in and talked to my pastor. This was 2004, 2005. And I said, what does this mean? He goes, Kris, that doesn't mean God says you're gonna die. It means that if this is where you're supposed to be at, and if this is your time, then it's your time. That's your plan. That's his plan. You gotta let control. He says, now don't let control and quit or not fight your heart out and try to get home. But if it happens, It happens. You may not even know it, but it might happen. And when he said that to me, I started to let go of control. Not control of me in my training, not control of me in my fighting. I'm fighting till the last breath. I made up my mind that I was not going to be on Al Jazeera in an orange jumpsuit if they came across that wall. I'll go out with till they have to put me down. No way. But I also understood that if I did die up there, then that was God's plan. And I'll be honest, when I started thinking like that, I fought a lot better. And I was a lot more confident. Well, we get attacked again at 3, and this was a pretty good sized force. 40, 50 guys, just wave after wave. And being idiots, they come from the same direction. Being idiots for us, thank you, for us, they come from the same direction, and we're just waiting for them this time. And I won't go into it pretty much because you can see it in the movie or read it in the book, but we just take them out, and we're just zipping them up. And it's like shooting prairie dogs back in Grand Junction when I was growing up in Nucla. When I was shooting prairie dogs in Nucla. It's just, you're just zipping them up. Now, as we fight them off, we get them fought off, and finally we get Glenn and his team in, and they come in around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Glenn is the only one that comes up to the roof to supplement our positions. And as Glenn comes up to the roof, he goes up to see Ty on Villa C. Mark Osgeist is on Villa C, so is Dave Ubin. I was a little upset when the whole team from Tripoli came in because he's the only one went up. Now, how many of y'all seen the movie? People seen it? Okay. There's a point in the movie, and like I said, the movie's very accurate. There's a section in the movie where Pablo, who plays me, Pablo Schreiber, he was the best actor in the movie. He was. Well, where Pablo Schreiber says, guys, he says, I don't know if this might be the best time to tell you this, but I've had to take a crap since we left the consulate. That is completely honest. I had to take a crap. So I was on the radio going, could somebody please come relieve me? Delta, can you come relieve me up on the roof? I gotta use the bathroom. I said, guys, I need to use I got a turtle head poking. Can I have somebody come help me? And I remember Boone coming up to me and go, dude, go, just go. And I remember I hustled back down. That was the fastest I've ever dropped trout in my life. Fastest. I get back on the roof, and when I get back on the roof, I hear and it doesn't sound like a mortar. Now, I lost my hearing. In fact, I'm supposed to wear hearing aids. I can't hear high-pitched noises very well. And if there's a lot of commotion or a lot of traffic, I can't hear, which is probably why I've been divorced again. Selective hearing, right? It's all right. You can laugh at my demise. It's all right. Pity me, please. Well, but I remember getting on the radio going, dude, did you guys hear that? And then for some reason, it just hit me. It's like, God, that's mortar. I like mortars. And then by the time I said the third mortar, it hit the backside of Villa C, right off the edge. It didn't hit Villa C, just right off the edge. And as I see it hit right off the edge, sorry about that, right off the edge of Villa C, I see Ty, he's got a machine gun, and he just goes sick, like he just holds that trigger down. And I see Glenn, Oz, and Dave start shooting. We were getting attacked from basically my 12 o'clock over from Villa C. And you guys that have been at firefights before know how gorgeous that is under night vision, seeing that machine gun just go sick. It looks like a laser, just go, oh, it's awesome. It's freaking awesome. Well, I'm looking over there, and the attack's coming through Villa C. I can't see the bad guys because Villa C's blocking my position. And I'm just jumping and going, God, I gotta shoot something. I get my gun up, and I just start putting rounds over their head. Because that snap, especially if you're a rookie, that snap's gonna keep your head down. Well, even if you're not a rookie, you're still gonna keep your head down. And while I'm shooting, I'm looking over my six to make sure we're not getting attacked from the front. Then I come back and shoot again. And I look around, we're not getting attacked. I come back and I start shooting again, and I see another mortar hit. This one hits Villa C right on the parapet edge. And as it hits, I see a guy go down. He says, I'm hit. Well, that was Dave. Dave caught a big piece of shrapnel in his face. He goes down. Now, I remember asking Mark, I said, why didn't you guys help him? I remember asking Oz. Oz said, well, he wasn't at life or death. Yeah, he had a bloody face, but you got to self-aid. You can't buddy aid. We don't have a big enough team to buddy aid. You can't take a gun out of the fight. And that makes sense. Like, yeah, you're right. So we kept shooting. I remember I turn around one more time, and I see boom, 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 right in the middle of Villa C. And when I see that, my night vision whites out. We got hit by 81s, 81 millimeter mortars. And as it comes back, I see this pixie dust. And what that is debris when a mortar or rocket hits, or anything that blows up from a bomb or a rocket or anything, it gets charged or it's heated, and it looks like fairy dust. I said, shh, coming down. And I remember looking at Villa C, and when the fairy dust all dissipated, there was nobody on Villa C. So it basically looked like they'd been vaporized. I'm like, gosh, I remember in my head, I'm like, damn, they're dead. Now this is where you overcome obstacles. This is where your faith comes in again. And I remember God kicking me in the back of the head going, get your gun back up. I got my gun back up and I just kept putting rounds over that roof. Now, it's very ironic. The Libyan Shield militia who escorted Glenn's team in, they had actually, their commander, and you'll see it in the movie, you'll see their commander, when they escorted Glenn's team in, their commander goes into Villa C. So when those mortars hit, he was calling his team to go take out the mortars. He's like, guys, I'm in Villa C. Now, it is ironic that we got saved by Libyans. We got saved by a Libyan militia that we could have been fighting on any other day. So there's 2 times we've been saved by Libyans. Or that mortars would have just crushed us. We didn't have any way to defend that. We had no air support, even though we asked for it at 9, 12 o'clock, and also at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, Tig, being the Marine he gets up on the rooftop. He doesn't know if we're gonna get mortared again. He sees Oz. Oz is actually, I see a guy getting up. I didn't know it was Oz, but I see a guy getting up trying to get his gun up, and it keeps falling down. His rifle keeps falling down. He tries to get up, and it just keeps, and then he tucks it between his arm, and he starts shooting, and then he tries to do it again. Well, Oz didn't realize his arm had been severed off. The movie's pretty good accurate on it. Actually, it was a lot longer of him trying to get his gun up than the movie shows. He tries to get his gun up. So whenever he tried to get his gun up and put his off hand up to support, it would fall because there was no support. It just come back. And I remember Tig get up there, and Tig sat Oz down, and I asked Tig, I said, Tig, what'd you do? He says, well, I sat Oz down, and when I sat him down, Oz just kept doing this. Man, this is cool, look at this. And I remember Tig said, man, Tig's like, dude, stop playing with it. You're making it worse, stop it. And Tig gets a tourniquet on Oz. Again, self-sacrifice, self-service. He doesn't care if he's gonna get mortared again. He's worried about his teammates. That's awesome. Politicians need to know this. They need to learn more of this. He's up there, he puts that tourniquet on. I remember asking Tig though, I was like, dude, how'd you get him to stop playing with it? He goes, I told him if he kept playing with it, he'd go blind. I didn't mean that, I'm just kidding, guys, I'm kidding. I don't think he actually said that, but it's actually, if he did say that, that's pretty dang funny. Well, this is how awesome Tig is too. We got three other guys down. He sees Dave. The movie doesn't show that Dave was actually worse off than Oz. Dave's arm was sheared off. Well, he had a tendon keeping his arm on, piece of skin. Dave had shrapnel on his face. Dave's leg had also been sheared almost off. It was just hanging by meat. And this is how Tig, again, this goes back to why you need to scuff up troops every once in a while. Tig is already used to being under intense scrutiny, being when he was in the Marine Corps, 10 years ago. It was a little longer than that. And he gets up there and he sees Dave. Dave has his pistol out. Dave's brain is not working. He's not functioning. So Dave points, he's shaking, but he points his gun at Tig because Dave just is thinking self-preservation. He's thinking, I'm gonna get attacked again. I've just been hit 3 times by mortars. I'm gonna get hit. And Tig has a sense of, has the wherewithal to go up to Dave and say, hey dude, I'm your buddy. The movie's perfect. Dominic Famusa played Tig exactly how Tig is. He goes up and says, hey buddy, I'm your friend, and he actually takes the gun away. And Dave's just going screaming, going, give me my gun back. And Tig, smart Tig, drops the magazine. Now I just contradicted myself that I said Marines aren't smart, but I just called Tig smart. So you guys, Marines, can get me on that later. But Tig drops the magazine out, racks the chamber to the rear, takes one out of the chamber, and he hands the gun back to Dave, so Dave feels comfortable, but Dave can't hurt anybody. That's pretty dang smart under those circumstances. And he gets tourniquets on Dave's arms and legs. Arm and leg. Those guys still have their appendages. If you've seen Mark on TV, Mark's the big-headed Marine that sits off usually to my left when we're on TV. His arm is still there. And Dave actually has his leg and his arm because of Tig. Tig saved their lives. Out of all of us, Tig's the hero out of everybody there that night. Ty and Glenn had died instantly. They were dead. The mortars hit precisely right in the middle, and they were gone. Well, as the night wore on, we're getting a militia coming in. Libyan Shield finally take out that mortar team, so we can't get hit by mortars anymore. When the mortar team was taking out the Ansar al-Sharia and Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, the 2 groups that were attacking us, I think they'd had enough. And then they probably heard Libyan Shield was coming. Well, they were coming to surround our position and finally lock it down. The only problem was we didn't know who the Libyan Shield militia, what their technicals look like. So I remember my team leader going, hey, Tanto, there's gonna be 50 technicals coming to secure a compound. And I said, dude, okay, what do they look like? He goes, I don't know. I go, well, how am I supposed to tell if they're friendlies, if they're the friendly technicals? He goes, I don't know. I said, so I have a rifle and I've got 50 technicals. Technicals have big machine guns in the back of their trucks. I said, if they're not friendly, how am I supposed to fight them off? I didn't get an answer. Like, well, typical, par for the course with my leadership that night. Well, I see 50 technicals coming, and I said, I got technicals coming. Are they friendlies? He goes, I don't know. Make sure they are. I'm thinking, all right, this is awesome. And it did. It was kind of like the movie. I'm like, screw it. If I'm done, I'm done. But I'm going to fight until I'm done, until they blow a hole in me. And I remember getting as low as I could in that parapet, and I was at sphincter level 5 on the parapet. My sphincter's about this big. Sphincter con 5 down there. And I remember they're coming at me, and it's daytime now, so my nods are up. I got my red dot on the dude's forehead on the front vehicle. And in my head, I'm going, okay, how am I gonna signal these guys? Well, everybody knows the jumbo in the Middle East because the Africans and the West Africans, they come and work in the Middle East, and the Arabs use the most time, they use the Africans as their menial labor. So the Sudanese, the Kenyans, they all know the jumbo. And I learned that actually in Mosul from the Sudanese. I would be actually driving and they would go the jumbo to me, and then I started doing it in town. The Arabs would all get it, which basically means hang loose, be cool. So I'm thinking, well, they got to know the jumbo. So I go like this. And like I said, you could put a lump of coal up my butt and it would have become a diamond. It's quicker than anything. And I'm aiming. I put my gun back down. And like I said, there's no fog of war in combat. And I remember seeing the front guy in the vehicle was the commander in the front vehicle. He was chewing cot, which is Copenhagen on steroids. And his teeth are yellow in there. And I just remember him coming like this through the window and smiling. And I remember seeing that yellow, brownish, beautiful brown Libyan grin. It's the most beautiful yellowish teeth I've ever seen in my life. And I remember getting ready to go, they're here.